Today we've got a little Wi-Fi revenge story. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, jerk neighbors. So, we lived in our house almost 30 years. Our neighbor to the right has a wife that is just the most vile waste of oxygen subhuman I've ever known. This woman despises us because, I kid you not, we have trees, and our leaves fall on her yard. It's about 20 years ago. I was coming home from a swing shift and smelled this real strong chemical odor. When I got out of my Jeep, my feet were crunching and I shined the flashlight and saw these white granules. So we have a strip of land between our two driveways. It's about 6 feet wide. Neither of us have golf course lawns, and I would allow the dandelions to grow. My bearded dragons loved eating the flowers, and the flowers would attract bees, which would go in and pollinate our garden. Come to find out, the witch of a wife put herbicide all over my lawn and their lawn. So I went over the next day and confronted her, and she started to complain about when the dandelions want to seed, they would blow in her yard. I looked around our court and said, Jesus Christ, everybody on the court has dandelions. You're gonna do that to their yards as well? Over the years, things got worse and worse with her. Like I said, their yard is just as crappy as mine is, so what I would do is go to the farm store and buy great big packs of dandelion seeds. I would wait until it's nice and dark and throw seeds all over their yard and in the backyard. Needless to say, they were not happy to have all the dandelions, and I have none in my backyard. I mean, hey, even if the dandelion that OP's throwing on their neighbor's lawn is an invasive species or something, sounds like it's already invaded the entire neighborhood to begin with. As far as a revenge goes on a neighbor who's willing to go to the lengths of, when you're not home, spraying herbicide all over your yard, I feel like this one earns a pretty acceptably passing grade. Camel Holocaust commented, "One of my neighbors sued another neighbor for something really petty. They were building an addition to their house and didn't have the permit visibly displayed, even though they had it and it was all kosher. This didn't affect his life in any single way. He lived across the street, the construction was in the back so you could barely see it, and they had no heavy machinery blocking anything. Anyways, his suit failed, and I think the most that happened was the family got a fine from the city, and it just put a bad taste in everyone's mouth. The whole block hated the guy now. He was obsessed with his yard. Typical old retired guy, so some of us kids decided to get revenge. We biked down to the park and collected dandelion seeds from the baseball field, just filled our pockets with them and some other weed seeds, basically whatever we could find that we thought would grow. We came by his yard at night and sowed all the seeds back and front yard. A few weeks later, they sprouted and he freaked out. He was out there all day pulling them. Then the next year, it kept going because they lay dormant during the winter. Half his lawn was those dang flowers, and he ended up ripping up most of his grass entirely and replacing it with new sod. Our next story is Revenge with a Snickers. This revenge happened about 30 years ago, but it's still funny. I was working in the government and we had paper manuals to guide us for processing our work. I was sitting next to this lady who was very lazy and never liked to look up the instructions for how to process different types of cases. She would throw the case at me to look it up and tell her how to handle the case. I finally started throwing the case back at her and told her to look it up herself. This went on for 6 months until I finally tabbed her manual for her, but she still resisted looking up the cases herself. Now, I'm a petty person, and I gather information to get people back. Turns out that she had lost 100 pounds the previous year, and every time she ate treats, Snickers are her weakness, she would have to walk an extra mile. I would buy a large Snickers and leave it on my desk all day without eating it just to torture her. When that paled, I bought the bite-sized Snickers and put them in the team jar. She would end up eating 10 a day, which made her walk 2 extra miles each day. This went on for years until we got different jobs, but I would give this information to anyone who had to work with her. So I guess this in total went on for 20 years, and she never got on. I guess I really am petty and she was really healthy. So does this strike anybody else as not even necessarily revenge, but like an unintentional reward? Like, I feel like if I've ever heard a revenge story that is actually like an absolute self-report backfire, it would be the person who spent their time and money to provide this lady her favorite treats ever and indirectly inspired her to continue working on her physical fitness every single day. Our next story is Dirtbag Fence. Earlier, I posted about the slumlord who owned a dump on the east side of our downtown home. This post is about the neighbors on the west side. We were friendly with the owner, a senior, as well as her daughter, 40-year-old female, and grandson, 10-year-old male, who lived in the house. Being on a corner lot, their backyard and parking pad abutted our driveway. Before we bought the place, the owner had a new privacy fence installed right on top of the property line. The only strange thing was the placement of the gate. The gate was installed along our driveway instead of theirs, meaning access to their backyard, they had to go onto our driveway. This wasn't an issue since we trained her son to not leave his bicycle laying in our driveway until No Shirt Guy came onto the scene. No Shirt Guy was the new boyfriend, and he was a train wreck. Under/unemployed, used hard drugs, and drank to excess. We didn't much care for him, but the problem started when he began damaging our vehicles multiple times as he entered and exited their backyard gate. So we installed the dirtbag fence. The dirtbag fence consisted of several really gnarly, old, ugly, battered fence sections that someone was giving away for free. We plopped those things just a few inches inside our property line. Only the skinniest of bean poles could slither in between them. No Shirt Guy was ticked and called the city. Bylaw came out, saw the eyesore, but ultimately decided that the fence could stay as it didn't violate any bylaws. That fence stayed put until the neighbor came to her senses and threw the loser out. You know, you see a situation like that where you see this guy who doesn't seem like nearly desirable at all, he's seemingly unemployed, is using and drinking, and it really makes you think, man, there really is somebody for everyone, isn't there? If a guy like that can at least get to the point of hanging around in this lady's place for a while, maybe I do have a shot out there. Candyland Canada commented, "Forget the fence, we need a whole dirtbag baseline of products. Dirtbag bumpers for those who park too close, dirtbag shopping carts for those who think that pushing you will magically help you to check out faster, and dirtbag cubicle liners for that annoying coworker who peeps over the top. The product that will really capture the public's imagination is the Dirtbag Pro Vulnerability Detector, TM. This is designed to thwart the abusers, those who prey on the grief-stricken, scammers who target the lonely elderly, and those who go after the least able to defend themselves, such as children and those with mental health afflictions. The Pro doesn't just make it difficult to access the target, it provides negative operant conditioning to those who even try. I'll let your fertile imaginations figure out what that might be. Our next story is, this former cook served his revenge cold. Years ago, I worked as a cook for a greasy spoon-style restaurant just off the interstate, I-95, that was connected to a hotel. The boss that hired me was great, got his paperwork done during the slow part of the day in 15 minutes, and worked side by side with us. The company fired this manager and replaced him with an awful manager who didn't drive, lived 15 miles away, and had to take 2 city buses to get to work, so she was never on time. She was also a raving alcoholic, and it seemed to take her hours to do the same paperwork our old boss could do in 15 minutes. She abused everyone in the restaurant and power-tripped constantly. So one day, I checked my schedule, and I see I'm scheduled for 11 to 7. As far as I knew, we weren't a 24-hour restaurant, so I show up at 11 a.m. for my shift, and my manager asked why I was there. I told her she scheduled me from 11 to 7. Her reply was my shift was 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. because she was making our restaurant a 24-hour restaurant, due to the hotel being attached to the restaurant. I worked the shift, but looked for a different job as well. In the interim, the manager took 3 hours off my paycheck because she found out that I dozed for 15 minutes on the clock. Remember, she doesn't drive and buses don't run overnight where I am, so she had no way to determine how long I dozed off for, and the doors were unlocked too. I corrected the time card and she charged it back with a note saying, "I am your manager." I finally found a better job and said nothing to anyone at work. However, on my last night, a Friday night, I refused to work. My boss tried to work my shift but couldn't stay awake to do it and wound up calling in a few first shift workers early. She tried to give me grief about it when I stopped in to get my last check, but I just smiled and walked away. That restaurant ended up closing down too. I'd like to think her poor management had something to do with that. Honestly, I feel like it's kind of a give and take situation. They didn't give anything to OP. They made their life hard, they were ungrateful, they were just difficult to work with. I mean, it was just such a terrible place for OP to work with such terrible people that it's not like they owed them any kind of like advance notice or something. Certainly, they wouldn't have done the same for OP. Pitbull fan commented, I'm a business broker. I examine many businesses as part of the evaluation necessary to establish if the business is saleable at all, and then to determine the price or loan amount for any interested buyer. In my examination process, I'm absolutely amazed at how many businesses are held together by only 1 to 3 people. When those people get irritated and leave, your business is absolutely crushed. I've seen it happen dozens of times. A new owner comes in and makes a lot of changes, staff doesn't like it, people with other decent options start moving on to other opportunities, often without notice. Freak this crap, I'm out of here. The business then takes a year or 3 to die, but it dies. And all because a new owner who thought he, almost always a male, knew better and freaked it all up. I watched a new owner of a $17 million rental car business shutter the business in only 19 months because he wanted to change all the software, the internal tracking, the insurance billing and invoicing systems all at once. Absolutely killed his businesses simply because he made big changes, and his staff reacted in a way he didn't expect, even when strongly advised by me not to do any of that for at least a year. Inner Masterpiece 18 commented, if there's one thing I learned in the military, it's if it ain't broke, don't fix it. A good new OC will take over command, introduce himself, and then watch to see how the guys work and if objectives are being fulfilled. If he sees any modification that may improve things, he should discuss it first. It may have been tried and failed already. If changes are then to be implemented, the team discussion works out what's best for everyone and the team spirit is maintained. Of course, in a military environment, there's not always time to discuss, and a command decision must be made. But if the team respects their commander from former team decisions, the trust is there. I've taken this forward in civilian life and found that I get on with my workforce teams really well, and subsequently less stress. Our next story is, try to threaten and con a tourist? Well, good luck. So this one is actually about my late mother, who wasn't one for putting up with other people's crap. I was around 7 or 8 at the time. We had gone on summer holiday to Italy and we were going to Venice for the day. My parents hadn't traveled much and it was actually my father's first trip abroad. So we get to Venice in our car and park up. My parents are trying to find a place where they can buy tickets for a ferry or boat across. Nobody speaks a lot of English. A man sees them looking around and approaches them and guides us towards this small boat. There's another couple in the boat, and he gives a decent quote for sailing us across. My parents accept. However, once on the boat, the price changes drastically, and the man and his 2 partners become quite threatening and are refusing to let anyone off the boat if they don't pay. After a very long discussion, my parents and the other couple end up just having to pay. They basically all pay all the money they have in cash, which, when traveling in the 80s, was quite a lot. The boat docks in a small passage, and at the end of it, you can see the St. Mark's Square. My mother makes sure that she is the last one to leave the boat. As she prepares to get off the boat, she quickly grabs all of the money from the man's back pocket. Yes, he was stupid enough to put it there, and it stuck up quite a bit, jumps off the boat, and because the men on the boat are so surprised that anyone would dare to do that, they don't immediately react, and we all manage to make it to the square, and so they can't follow. My mother, of course, gives the other couple their money back, and my parents have their money back, and the trip ended up costing them nothing. Thinking back, I have to say I'm still impressed that she had the courage to do so. I mean, I don't know the optics of it all. Is it kind of a more public place? Could these guys actually get away with, like, I don't know, assaulting people? Like, what would they have actually done if they refused to pay this heightened rate? Either way, though, that's a great story, and it kind of sounds like something that would fit in like a TV episode. SSN's Forever commented, I was in Italy ages ago, early 90s, as a young, dumb, full of, you know the rest, sailor. Some hottie started talking to me, which, after months at sea on a submarine full of seamen, seemed like a great thing. She asked me to buy her a drink. I was in my second beer, said sure, and we're both sat at a bar. We talked for a few minutes after the drink was served, but then she suddenly had to go pet her cat or something and disappeared. I shrugged my shoulders, decided to leave, so I went to pay for the 2 beers and champagne, and the bill was $800. I started arguing with the bartender when a couple huge bouncers showed up. I was basically held captive until willing to pay. Lucky for me, a couple friends came in. We talked for a minute and then they left. One of the bouncers wanted to know what was going on. I told them I didn't have the money to cover the bill, and I sent my friends for more money. I, of course, sent them to get help. After 10 minutes later, about 30 of my shipmates came in. We all walked out the door together, daring them to do something. I didn't end up paying them anything. The work hard, play hard Navy prior to the later 90s was a great place to be, and I miss it. The guys in my first boat, Sunfish SSN 649, were great. It wasn't always good times, but that crew somehow still made it a great place to be. Zoreb1 replied, "Common scam. Worked as a civilian in the Navy and would get emails warning of various scams." Another one was how a car dealer would provide a free ride to the lot, but if you didn't buy a car, you would be stuck miles from home. Dealers got banned because of this. Our next story is, maybe don't park in the reserved mobility impaired lot next time. My two parents, one who's wheelchair bound and the other who has advanced Parkinson's disease, live with me. Due to their mobility issues, I obtained a special permit, time-based, that allows me to park temporarily in most handicapped reserved parking lots when I'm transporting them. This has been a godsend, since there is one of these lots just below my apartment and the car park is very busy. The rules governing the usage of this permit in such lots are quite strict, and most keep to them. However, you get the odd motorist who parks there without a permit from time to time. Even though they run the risk of having to pay a fine, it really depends on whether anyone reports it, and then whether the parking attendants get there in time to issue the fine. Oftentimes, they don't, and the drivers get away with it. So anyway, one day I was bringing my parents to their usual appointments, mom to dialysis, dad to the elder care center. As we exited the lift, I spotted an MPV reversing, then driving forward to straighten out, before reversing all the way to the back of the handicapped reserved lot and then stopping. Not wanting to jump to conclusions, I walked to the front of the car where the permit would usually be displayed. This is mandatory. Nope, no permit. Only a couple of decals, one of which has the crest of our country's police force. And the driver, a middle-aged lady, is about to exit the car. Instead of immediately reporting the illegal parking like I always do, I figured it would be better to give her the chance to move the car since she was still there. So I firmly but politely informed her that she was parking in a handicapped lot without a license, and could she please move her car as I would be using it presently. The lady went ballistic and started yelling, "Who said I was parking? I'm not parking, I'm making a turnout. My car is big, so I have to make a bigger turn. Why do you say I'm parking?" Which is absolute nonsense. If you're doing a 3-point turn, you don't reverse all the way to the back of a parking lot just to make the turnout. I decided to ignore her and walk to my car, which was 3 lots down. To my irritation, instead of getting back in her car and moving, she followed me, haranguing me all the way about how she wasn't parking. All this while, her car firmly parked in the handicap, and then she yelled, "Why you show me the finger? You show me the finger for what?" Now, there's a lot of things I can handle, but to plainly slander me to gain sympathy? That's a bridge too far, lady. I did not flash my middle finger at you. She replies, "Yes, you show me the finger. Why you show the finger at m—" I was seriously ticked off by now, but I was also on a time-sensitive schedule. I had to get my mom to the dialysis center by a cutoff time. By now, 3 minutes had passed since she started screeching at me. I ignored her, got into the car, made sure my permit reflected the correct time, and drove out towards the handicap lot and waited. The woman, realizing that I wasn't about to take her bait, got back into her car, started her engine, and drove off. After dropping my parents off, I decided that I wasn't going to take this one lying down. Unfortunately, I didn't have photographic evidence or video footage of her car actually parked in the lot, only pulling out of it. The only camera that would have caught it belongs to the housing board, HDB, who also manages the car park. However, my rear windshield camera did capture her license plate number, and there was that decal. So I sat down at my laptop, composed a firmly worded email, then checked it for accuracy and sent it off to the police commissioner. You see, with the police emblem so prominently pasted on the upper left-hand corner of her front windshield, either she was 1, an off-duty officer, in which case her conduct was unbecoming of a member of a government agency, 2, a relative of an officer, 3, illegally displaying this decal. This is an actual offense in my country to give a misleading impression, or 4, a citizen who got the decal from a roadshow. While number 4 was the most likely, I figured I had nothing to lose. And really, if it was any of the first 3, then there ought to be some corrective action taken. That was the gist of the email. The next day, I received a standard, "We received your feedback with thanks," and have sent it to the relevant unit email. Oh well, at least someone saw it. This morning, I woke up to find another email, this time from a staffer who asked if he could give me a call later in the day to find out more about the incident. Surprised but somewhat bemused, I replied, "Sure, I can take a call between 1 to 4 p.m. I wouldn't be driving then, so I wouldn't be likely to miss the call or take it illegally." The staffer suggested 3 p.m., and I confirmed it and gave him my contact number. At 3 p.m. sharp, the phone rang. It was the staffer. He made some quick queries, including if the woman had at any point identified herself as a member of the police. To be fair, she hadn't, and I said so. He then explained that they had gone through their system and their car did not belong to anyone in the agency. And since the woman had not claimed to be a police officer, the likelihood was that 4, the decal was picked up at a roadshow. I apologized for having troubled him for such a small matter. He replied cheerfully, "No, ma'am, it's no trouble. We do have to investigate to make sure that there is no misuse. Oh, yes, we've also helped you report this to HDB already. So sorry that you had to go through this." So at the end of the day, she ended up with a $200 fine for unauthorized parking in a handicapped reserved lot. I checked, and she won't be able to appeal because they will check the cameras and all it will show is that the car was stationary in the lot with her exiting for over 3 minutes. The most hilarious part of the whole thing was, all she had to do that day was hold her tongue for 10 seconds, get out of the lot, and then scream at me, and she would have gotten away with it. So gong shi fai tai, lady. I hope you enjoy the extra ong pao you're going to have to give to HDB on top of the road tax you'll need to pay in about 5 days' time, which, given the size of your car, isn't exactly a small amount. Maybe next time you'll think twice about giving it to a stranger when you're clearly in the wrong, especially when you don't know that the stranger has a history of knowing who to go to and exactly how to do so in a way their complaint gets seen. Let's be real here. Even though this lady was busted, even though she got caught, and even though she got fined $200 for this, do we really think she's going to learn anything from this and actually apply herself in the future? No. This is just another everybody else is out to get me to throw onto the pile. In her eyes, I'm sure this is all still OP's fault and the system is corrupt. TazDevil64 commented, "I got really angry about this one time. My disability doesn't show, and I've had people say stuff, but that doesn't bother me. I'm a heart patient, and wasn't feeling the greatest that day. A woman with a small child parked right in front of me in the only disabled spot. I pulled up and politely asked her to move so I could park. She started yelling at me about how I could dang well walk, she had a toddler, etc. I finally got angry, blocked her car in, got out, and started into the bank. She yelled, 'Where the freak was I going? Move my car!' I told her she had 2 choices. Either move immediately so I can park, or I can leave my car blocking her in while I take care of my business and call the meter maid. It's a $300 ticket where I live in the US. I told her I had to nearly die to get those plates. And I'll be danged if some brat is going to take my designated space without me saying anything. I always ask nicely the first time. After that, all bets are off." Our next story is, don't be jerks to the guy managing your Wi-Fi. My wife and I moved into a basement apartment. The family above us had 4 boys between ages 4 to 9. We actually enjoyed the occasional pitter-patter from the boys upstairs and their gleeful laughing. Yes, there was the occasional game night that ran late, but we didn't mind. I would constantly be sharing food with them, and they would occasionally send some cookies our way. The husband upstairs would constantly solicit my help with IT stuff because he's not a computer guy, like when their router died and I offered to just replace the routers with my own that I had in storage. Everything was great between us and them until it wasn't. It's important to note that the wife upstairs was the landlord's daughter. It's also important to note that in our rental contract, we were guaranteed in point-blank, no uncertain terms that we would get quiet enjoyment after 7 p.m. After a year passed by, the noises upstairs started getting significantly louder. The pitter-patters turned into stomps, crashes, and other loud bang noises. We noticed the parents were gone more often, leaving their 10-year-old kid in charge to babysit the other 3. Our own little baby kept waking up in a panic due to the loud bangs and crashes at all hours of the day and night. We tried diplomacy and asking to tone down the noise. The more we asked them to keep it down with the stomping after 7 p.m., the more the wife seemed to retaliate and be rude. We even offered to pay for a contractor to come in and soundproof the flooring on our dime. Their response was, "My daddy is the landlord, so he'll always take my side. If you don't stop complaining, I'll have my daddy kick you out." We had enough and decided to move. We sold them our barbecue grill since we wouldn't need it where we were going, and most importantly, sold them the routers they needed. They never asked to take over the Wi-Fi account, which is great because I'll occasionally just block devices from working. Your little Wi-Fi toaster isn't working, probably just had a bad toaster. Your iPad isn't connecting to the internet, maybe you need to restart it, etc. Nothing major like their work computers or TVs because that's too noticeable and would be blamed on the Wi-Fi, not the device itself. If they ever ask for help with it, my standard rates are $100 an hour with an additional 50% jerk tax. You know, I think the fortunate, or maybe unfortunate, if they want that $100 an hour that they'll never get, thing is that they're IT illiterate. They'll have no idea that OP's doing anything to influence their bad devices. The last thing they're ever going to do is try to find OP to ask them to troubleshoot their IT issues now. Thelgao commented, I remember when my sister-in-law was bumming on our couch and wouldn't leave, so I just made it less palatable. I had that Asus custom firmware on the router. It had a nice section where you could block devices on a 30-minute schedule. Like a TV guide, I had a random 30 to 120-minute chunks I would block a device. Mondays 2 to 4, iPad is blocked, 3 to 5, Nintendo DS is blocked, 4 to 6, laptop blocked, etc. I filled it all in at random. The Wi-Fi's acting up again. I don't know, try something else like your iPad. See, it's fine. Never mess with IT. I'll even do stuff I never get closure on, whether it impacted them or not. It's the principle. Our next story is the tampon catastrophe. This story takes place when I was in the 9th grade and had just started at a new school. It was a small private Catholic school. On passing, one might mistake it for a house. From the very first day I started at the school, I hated it. The majority of the students had grown up together and all of the families were close friends. The cliques and the prejudices against new kids were insane. And, of course, I found myself outside the approval of the school. About a month or so into the school year, I had the misfortune to start liking a certain jerk named Joe. You could say that he was the popular kid, adored by all students and teachers. Indeed, he was very charismatic, and I fell for it. He didn't reciprocate my feelings, obviously, and I was butthurt. I took my revenge. One morning, I stuck a tampon in the pocket of his coat that was hanging on the coat rack. To this day, I'm not sure what I was trying to accomplish by doing that. I guess I just wanted to shake him up a little or something. I stuck it in and scurried off to class. I had no intention of anyone else knowing about it. A little later, while I was in class, I actually started to feel bad about it and decided to go take the tampon out of Joe's coat. I asked to be excused and left the room, heading to the coat rack. There were people milling about, so I was waiting for the coast to clear. Suddenly, Joe's best friend Isaac comes out of the class and grabs the coat off of the coat rack, bringing it into the classroom. There went my chance at redemption. I headed back to class. It was almost the end of class, so everyone was just chilling, waiting for the bell. It was a class of about 20 people. Joe and Isaac were standing in front of the class, and Isaac hands Joe his coat, which he apparently asked Isaac to get for him. I don't know why he didn't do it himself. As Joe puts on the coat, Isaac says, "Hey, there's something sticking out of your pocket." "What? Where?" "Right here." Isaac proceeds to pull out the tampon in front of the entire class, which erupts into commotion. Isaac was confused for about 5 seconds until the realization of what he was looking at hits him, and his eyes bulged out of his head. Joe himself was a sight to behold. His face was beet red, and his jaw might as well have been on the ground. The entire class was cackling. He rushed out of the room with Isaac right at his heels. I stayed at that school for 2 more years, and nobody ever found out it was me who did it. I moved to a different state and went to a public school for senior year, which was one of the best experiences of my life, but now and then, I'll still get a kick out of the expression on Joe's face. Petty as heck? Oh yeah, but also satisfying. There's nothing more panic, hot flash inducing stuff than anything involving periods to a ninth grade boy. Finding out that thing in his coat pocket that he just pulled out and is currently holding is a tampon might as well have been akin to him figuring out that he was holding a stick of pure deathly uranium. Luckwin 2020 commented, "I went to an all-boys Catholic boarding school in the Midwest, and I was one of the few black kids there. I was the only black kid my last 2 years. I got racial slurred pretty much 24/7. When the main instigators would have beef with each other, I would vandalize their stuff to make them think the other had done it. They never knew it was me." Our next story is applied for demotion. Back in 2008, I earned a promotion at the bank and was licensed to sell mutual funds. The increase in pay was marginal, maybe $200 to $300 more a month take home. By being licensed in Canada through the MFDA, it was tough to do any work outside of the bank without a ton of approvals. Any outside jobs would need to be approved by the manager, her manager, and also the MFDA. I used to partially perform at gigs for a living and had a few ins to get gigs for some extra cash, and also to do what I was far more passionate about than banking, and my manager said it should be fine as it was unrelated to banking and not a basic job that could cause issues if clients saw me doing it. Not that there's anything wrong with minimum wage jobs, it's just that her explanation was, "How would you feel if you just invested X amount of money with your advisor and then saw them flipping burgers that evening?" Personally, I wouldn't mind, as I would think the person was just working hard to get ahead, but also I understood how she meant it. She also told me that her boss would approve it and it would come down to the MFDA, who would also very likely approve it. Flash forward 2 months, I asked somewhat regularly on the progress of my request and was told I should open up a business account for my side hustle as it would likely get approved soon. It didn't. My manager approved it, but it never made its way to the MFDA because boss's boss changed her tune and said no. No justifiable reason given at all. I was incredibly unhappy because my pay wasn't great. Calgary, circa 2007 to 2009 when I lived there, had great wages almost everywhere because of the oil boom, and I felt like I couldn't get ahead, especially with a license to sell investments keeping me from extra income. Some other personal bankers and tellers worked at Stampede doing bar work and made a killing, so I was missing out. My manager, who was amazing, got sick. She took time off and there was a shuffle at the bank. This particular branch of this company had a satellite branch not far, maybe 10 kilometers, that shared the same transit code. My assistant manager, also awesome, went across to manage the satellite branch while their manager came to our big branch to manage it while main boss was away sick. At the same time, the boss's boss was also on holiday for 3 weeks. Turns out the satellite branch was recruiting for a personal banker level 1, no MFDA license. I asked my friend who was now managing it if I could apply and if she would put me at the top of the salary band. She happily did and supported my reasons why. I got the position and was now without the MFDA license and only making about $50 to $100 less a month as I wasn't high up on their level 2 personal banker pay brand. Boss's boss comes back and is livid. She told me and the manager at the satellite branch she never would have approved it, but in her absence, the person who approved it at the same level didn't know the backstory and said yes. I ended up enjoying life a lot more until the end of 2008 when I moved back to NS after leaving the bank to pursue other things. Final note, I was one of only 2 people who could train new personal bankers to do mutual funds, as you had to be shadowed and shadow them so many times before they could be signed to deal. Without me, they were screwed for a while. I loved that their shady decision-making went against them. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not surprised when you hear there's shady decisions being made here when it's specifically related to the banking side of the world. And to be fair, any company that's on like the same scale as whatever this bank probably is, it wouldn't shock me to hear any of them are making shady decisions. Catless Boy Mom commented, "Oh, how I remember that BS. Background checks, fingerprints, basically selling your firstborn, and then they lock you out of anything that puts you in the category to use the services you are providing. ETA, it does carry over well to other industries." Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy these crazy stories of revenge, it would be amazing if you left a like or left a review if you're listening to my podcast. Our next story is, a boy harassed me so I spoiled his favorite film series. This was in 2019 when the hype for Marvel's Endgame was in full swing. I was in high school, 13 or 14, and for some reason this kid was obsessed with me. Like, from the very start, he decided to constantly annoy me. He'd written a song about me cheating on him, we never dated, and had followed me around the corridors telling me I had a nice butt. We lived in the same area of town, and he once followed me home saying he was going to make me wet. Tried telling the school, but they said he probably had a crush on me and to ignore him. This kid loved Marvel, especially Iron Man, like freaking obsessed. Themed backpack, a pencil case, the lot. When he wasn't harassing me, it was talking about Iron Man. He got ill the same week Endgame was released and was off school a few days. A few of my friends had seen it that weekend, and since I wasn't interested, they spoiled it for me and told me Iron Man died at the end. The kid came in the next day after being ill and started harassing me again. I knew he hadn't seen Endgame yet, and to be honest, I just wanted him to shut up, but I was a really quiet kid who never retaliated, so I told him Iron Man died in Endgame. I know it's bad to spoil things on the premise you're not interested in that thing, but he was fully stunned. The look on his face was brilliant. This story kind of reminded me of one thing I loved doing fairly recently, which was going on YouTube and seeing parents who show their kids Star Wars for the first time, so they can show that reaction of the kid genuinely experiencing, "No, I am your father," for the first time. I just remember reading comments of people who, back in the 70s, actually went and saw the movie when it came out, and people who were coming out of the showing when other people were in line for like the next showing were loudly spoiling the reveal towards the end of the movie, and I just think about like how crushing it is if you're such a big fan and you have something that monumental revealed to you without being able to experience it. I can imagine it really affected that kid. It kind of reminded me of the crazy buzz that happened when The Force Awakens came out, and there was like a major character death in the movie, and the whole premise was like, please don't spoil it, but you could not escape people trying to be edgy spoilers. Ripley825 commented, I told a guy I used to work with who was obsessed with Marvel not to pull a Thanos and lose his head when he was benching about something. I saw a pirated version of the movie before he got to. I loved watching the color drain from his face. Apparently, he went to see the movie right after work and came in so ticked the next day, he wouldn't even look at me, let alone talk to me. That was a peaceful shift. Our next story is, my roommate kept borrowing my shampoo, so I filled it with hair dye. My roommate had a habit of borrowing my stuff without asking, mostly small things, food, laundry pods. But what got me was the shampoo. It was a salon brand I liked, not cheap, and I noticed it disappearing way too fast. I asked her once if she was using it, and she smiled and said, just a little now and then, you don't mind, right? Actually, I did. So I bought a cheap bottle, poured out the shampoo, and filled it with semi-permanent purple hair dye. Nothing damaging, just something that would show up under light or in blonde hair. A few days later, she came out of the shower with a towel on her head, completely unaware. An hour or so passed before I heard a sharp, "What the heck?" She stood in the hallway, hair tinted purple at the roots. Not bright enough to be full drama, but definitely noticeable. She never touched my stuff again. Didn't apologize, didn't bring it up, just quietly started buying her own shampoo. Funny how a little color can make boundaries real fast. It would have been great if OP said that they walked out of that shower looking like Stu's little sister from Rugrats or something. Am I dating myself with that reference? I also would have accepted an unexpected twist where like they ended up actually really liking the color. Like, OP, what color did you put in there? Because I kind of like it. Chris Venus commented, this has gotta be fake. Who has a shower and doesn't notice that the water is running purple? Edit, since I'm getting replies about people having their eyes closed while shampooing, I would like to add, or the dye staining their hands and other parts of them, or the texture being different, the color coming out of the bottle, the smell of it, and probably more things that others have pointed out. Our next story is, demoted myself and left him stranded. I worked at a company a few years back and had an amazing manager. He was efficient, supportive to everyone, and all around decent, but due to him being so good, the company wanted to move him to a store to help pick that place back up. Just before he was due to leave and a new manager started, I was due to have a week off due to surgery and so missed the introductions, and he seemed to have an issue with this. I came in on my day off to hand in my sick note and meet the guy, and he was cold and extremely lazy. We were customer facing and sometimes needed manager approval, but he would just sit there staring at the security cameras at his desk and ignore the manager bell. He would find the longest jobs and make them longer. A 30-minute stock check took him one whole 8-hour shift, for example. Turns out he was a massive perv too. I could write a long list, but I'll give the highlights. He would walk past deep breathing in my ears, would talk down about women. My favorite quote from him, when asked to do a job I shouldn't be doing, he said, "Why get a dog and bark yourself?" That's when I lost it. What he didn't realize is I had recently been promoted a week before his arrival and had granted a very little pay rise and also has a 6-month probation automatically applied. So I went home, wrote out a demotion resignation letter explaining how I was stepping down from my current role and going back to my previous role of 4 years, effective immediately. I was the key holder for that night alone with one other staff. As it was effective immediately, a senior member had to suddenly stay and do all of my duties. Guess who? Him. He also had to rearrange the next 2 weeks' rota and triple the work hours to fill my role. I also spoke to the regional manager that week and asked to be moved to another store, and if he refused, I would go to the police for sexual harassment, and I had a long list and we had cameras. I was moved a week later. So my only thing is, why did OP have to threaten that they would go to the police? If they're working for a place that has a regional manager that can move them to another store, surely they have some kind of HR department or something that can begin a case here, right? Did that not also happen? They had to threaten police action? Our next story is, My Firefighter Uncle had his food stolen, so he took it upon himself to let them eat poop. Not my story, but one my uncle told us at a family barbecue years ago, and it's lived rent-free in my head ever since. My uncle was a firefighter, working long shifts. I was young at the time, so I don't recall the exact hours, but what I do remember is the man could cook. Thai, Indian, Mexican, always something packed with flavor, and his desserts were so good. His rice pudding in particular was legendary. Being smart, he meal prepped and kept everything labeled in the station fridge, but his desserts kept going missing, especially the rice pudding. No note, no apology, just gone. Eventually, he had had enough. He left a polite warning on the fridge. To whoever keeps eating my food, stop. There will be consequences. Of course, someone ate it again, so we made another batch, but this one was special. Still rice pudding, still cinnamon on top, but this time he added one special ingredient: dried white dog you-know-what. He lived on a 5-acre property and went into the backyard to collect some. Not hard with them having 6 dogs at the time. He crushed it up with a spoon, stirred it through the pudding, and topped it off like normal. Then he took Polaroid photos of the entire process. He left the dessert in the fridge at work, and what he assumed would happen, happened. The next day, he casually laid out the Polaroids across the station kitchen table. His meals and desserts were never touched again. Now, this happened back in the 80s, so I have no idea if he got into trouble or if the other guy complained, but I think looking at my memory of my uncle, he was like a manly man, and I'm sure his coworkers would have been the same. Not likely to dob themselves in for poor behavior and admitting to eating dog poop. I mean, I don't know, even in the 80s, he left photographic evidence of what he did on the table. Are you really too much of a manly man to report somebody who intentionally made you ingest dog poop? Even in the 80s, is that the bar? You're too much of a macho man to admit that somebody slipped dog poop into a food you ate? Eduardo commented, a similar story from my college days that may be apocryphal. In the 80s, Girl Scouts, or brownies or whatever, sold Krispy Kreme donuts door to door. One knocked on a fraternity door. The fraternity guy who answered thought quickly and said that they would like to buy a box or two and send it to their friends next door, in a rival fraternity. He asked if he could put a note on the box. I experienced this. The Girl Scouts actually had the donuts with them in those days and took it back into the frat. The boys next door gladly received the donuts with a note that said, "Thanks for the party last night. Love, Patty and Jen." And they scarfed them down. A day later, they had a photograph in their mailbox, physical mailbox, of 24 male torsos with Krispy Kreme donuts on their you-know-what. Our next story is, don't want to talk to your immigrant lab mate? Well then, I hope you didn't need that experiment to work. This happened to me when I was a graduate student in Germany. Short background, I was born and raised in an Eastern European country. Unfortunately, Western Europe often perceived Easterners as lacking in health and morals. What we actually lacked was funding. So, after I graduated top of my class from university and I found myself unable to continue work on my research project, I applied for and managed to get into an international graduate program in Germany on a full scholarship. My German colleague, let's call her Clara, who started at the same time, was not able to get a scholarship initially, and she was very unhappy about not being able to speak German with me. The program we joined was all in English. I was fluent at that point in 3 languages, English being my second, but German wasn't one of them. I started learning it right away, took classes, and organized a tandem partner who could speak German to me once a week. However, German is a difficult language and I couldn't learn it overnight. After 2 months, Clara started to get impatient and decided she was going to immerse me in the language. How did she do that? By not speaking to me and discussing with all of our department colleagues only in German, without ever involving me in the conversations. She got angry when that technique failed to improve my German because she said, "That's how children learn languages, by hearing people speak around them. No, children learn a language when people interact with them in that language," which she wasn't doing. We got new colleagues, all German, and at her insistence, they all almost exclusively spoke German. Mind you, we were all part of the same English graduate program. They only addressed me in English when it was absolutely necessary. All this time, I continued to take classes and my German comprehension progressed. That was only part of Clara's problems with me, which included 1, I only got into the graduate program because I was a foreigner. 2, I must be sleeping around because I refused to tell her the number of previous partners I had. It was 0 actually. 3, my bronchitis, which always activates after a bad cold, is really TB. 4, I was now dating my now husband because I wanted a visa. I didn't need one, and we shouldn't have children together anyway because people from different cultures often do not have healthy babies. 5, I was trying to spite her by not taking birth control so that our menstrual cycles can sync. Not kidding. Fast forward a couple of years, I was in the lab cleaning some equipment for an experiment. Behind me was an automated instrument, we had called it a spotter, that was mixing together a liquid sample with a resin, then passing them through a needle and depositing them on a clean plate so that they could be read by a different machine. The process took about 2 hours and was accompanied by the rhythmic noise as the needle moved up. Sample mixing, sideways to a new position, down, sample drop-off, up again, and on and on. Clara was sitting 20 yards away, talking to another lab mate about their weekend. At that point, my German was much better, and I could tell they were talking about food and relatives, nothing work-related. All of a sudden, the machine, spotter, stopped. I jumped up and saw that the needle had gotten jammed between the up and down position. Never happened before, and I knew we had a couple of minutes tops to save Clara's sample. Mind you, this wasn't the first time I've saved one of her experiments. A year earlier, she had left town after performing surgery on 2 mice, and she forgot them on the table in the surgery room. I got a desperate phone call from her. She was then 2 hours away on Friday evening, begging me to save her mice, which were by now cold and not breathing. I was able to bring one of them back to life. Since Clara was now right there, I rushed to her and started saying, "Hey, you're..." Clara raises her finger in front of my face, wags it and says, "Not now, I'm busy." Then turns back to our colleague to talk about her mom's cooking. Something inside me snapped, and I thought, "Oh yeah? Well, freak you then." I quietly turned on my heels and got back to my experiment. 15 minutes later, when Clara's sample was beyond saving, she ends her conversation and sashes towards the exit with a big smile on her face. Over my shoulder, I told her, "The spotter got jammed with your sample." The smile melted off of her face and was replaced by panic, which was followed by a, "Why didn't you tell me?" So I replied with a big grin on my face, "I tried to. You were busy." Those samples took anywhere between a few days to a few weeks to replace. I'm not sure she was able to repeat that experiment, and I don't care. At the end of our program, her harassment campaign against me, which had initially received support from our colleagues, backfired, and I was offered a job and a raise, while she was offered the door. 1 year later, when I left for another position, she was still looking for a job. Had I, the immigrant, been the one on unemployment for a full year, I would have never heard the end of it. I think the thing that upsets me the most is the fact that everybody kind of just went along with it for the most part. Like, I guess I would want to believe it's coming from the scope of, oh, it's trying to be beneficial, right? Like they said this is going to help them learn German so much faster. But it ends up just kind of looking like a really crappy hazing situation on a foreigner. NP Highview commented, I worked for a large German multinational with divisions in the United States. The executives were German, and us peons were mostly from the US. The executives would regularly have hallway conversations in English. They also provided German language classes to us non-German speakers. One day, the executives were chatting, but as I approached, they switched to German. By then, however, I'd learned enough to pick up that a merger was in the works. Somehow, word got out. Our next story is, roommate said, if you're so tired of cleaning up after us, just leave our stuff where you found it. I'm 35, female now, but in college I rented a small house with 3 dudes, all of us in our early 20s. I have many stories of petty revenge from this time in my life, as guys in their 20s who are living away from their mothers for the first time often need the point illustrated in no uncertain terms. But this is one of my favorites. The house had 1 bathroom for the 4 of us, and as the only girl and the only one with a clean freak for a mother, I ended up basically doing all of the cleaning. I frequently put things away in the common space, shoes in the front closet, laptop on a shelf so no one trips over the cord, etc. Both because it made cleaning easier and because it's a common courtesy to clean up your crap in common spaces. I was often met with irritation from my roommates who couldn't find their stuff, as if I was hiding it from them and not putting it in perfectly reasonable and agreed upon places. During this time, one roommate also had a girlfriend who was basically a squatter in our house. I did my best to be friendly and welcoming, including driving her places when I had time and helping her find a job. Both mistakes in hindsight, but that's another story. She technically had a place to live elsewhere, but all of her stuff somehow ended up in our house, including our 1 tiny bathroom, which she showered in twice a day despite contributing nothing to rent or utilities. The number of products lining our shower easily tripled when she appeared, which made cleaning the bathroom a nightmare. I asked that she corral her bathroom stuff and keep it in his room so the shower could be cleaned without knocking 27 conditioner bottles over, but that was asking too much. The final verdict from my roommates was that I should just leave our stuff where you found it, so I did. When I cleaned the shower, I sprayed down all of her bathroom products with scrubbing bubbles rather than move it. It melted her expensive shampoo bar pretty quickly and made all of her bottled products slippery, but I was just following instructions. Roommate's laptop was plugged in, so I tripped over the cord while walking through the living room. You said just leave it. So I did, even though tripping over it unplugged it and now it's dead when you need to use it. And my personal favorite, roommate and girlfriend left their shoes all over the living room rug. The closet is literally 3 feet away. I needed to vacuum, so I left their stuff where I found it, rolled up the living room rug with their shoes inside, and vacuumed the whole house. They came out halfway through and asked where I put their shoes because they were leaving. I said, I didn't put them anywhere. I left them where I found them. They kept looking confused about 30 minutes later when I unrolled the rug to replace it, revealing their shoes. They called me a jerk, but after the shoe incident, suddenly her bathroom products were put away, shoes ended up in the closet, and the laptop was plugged in somewhere out of the way. The bottom line here is, when you're living in like a postgraduate situation, you just can't take on that kind of responsibility for all these other first-time tenants. I mean, the last thing I would want to do is move into a place with 3 other dudes and basically have to play mom for them the whole time. I guess like OP did, you just have to be annoying enough for them to finally learn how to take care of their stuff. Jazz like still 1136 commented, my flatmate was like this. My mom expected cleaning to be done like the queen was coming to tea. Flatmate was messy. I would just pick up her stuff and throw it in her room. Clean clothes folded up on the sofa, into her room. Shoes not by the door, into her room. She eventually got to where she would pick up after herself. I moved out after the first year. OP responded commenting, like the queen is coming for tea describes how my mom keeps her house as well. I wasn't anywhere near that demanding on these dudes, but I did not expect to trip over their stuff in the dark or step in pee drops on the bathroom floor. Our next story is Loudest Revenge on My Noisy Neighbors. No, this is not a made-up story. I just want to explain what I actually did. So I've started doing this since September 2024 because I have a next-door noisy neighbor problem that's still going on till this day. that would yell and talk and cheer loudly at midnight, rendering our 2 rooms useless, ending up as a storage room. I live at the 4th floor, so I had a random funny idea to blast loud African tribe/Maori chanting noises at max volume with my custom-built speakers powered with car stereo, facing against my noisy neighbor's wall. Like, it's so dang loud, I can't even stand in the room any longer. It's vibrating my internals. Same for my neighbor's wall because of how deep the chanting vocals are. I did this for 3 hours, and I want to explain how loud it is because I noticed people walking by in the streets are staring at my window and they were like, "What is going on up in there?" Because our storage room windows were wide open. And no, my speakers weren't close to the windows, it's just sitting on the floor facing to my neighbor's wall. So I went to the balcony and it shocked me like how crazy loud it is. Like the tribes are coming down to the street but you can't see them. Like it can be heard more than 200 feet away, all that coming from my window. And every single person that walks down by our street can hear it and looking up at our window. It even caught attention to a nearby cafe, and the few employees walked out and looked up at us. And then a bald guy at the next apartment building came to the balcony and yelled at me, so I immediately stopped. Maybe a JBL part box can brutally outperform this, but I don't own one. And I did it again a few days later. Then my downstairs neighbor came knocking at my door. I immediately toned it down and didn't answer. So, I mean, OP got their revenge, but they literally became like target number 1, not just for like their next door neighbors, their downstairs neighbors, but kind of like the whole freaking neighborhood. And then OP had the bright idea to go walk out on their balcony just to make sure anybody who can see them can identify, yes, I am the one currently destroying your ears. Absolutely brilliant move. Where do we go when we die? Commented. So, because you can hear your next door neighbor sometimes, you decide to be an absolute menace to everyone around you? And not just once, even though people far away were clearly annoyed, but multiple times? And you live on the 4th floor, so you were probably insufferable to a whole building of at least 3 other floors? Wow, imagine being proud of this. Our next story is, kick me out, lose everything. I'm a 24-year-old guy, and I used to live with my parents. For context, our city has a very, very high violent crime rate. My dad grew up in an area in the boonies with 0 crime, and my mom did grow up in this town, but back then it was a lot safer and kids could run around outside without having to worry. Our city changed a lot since 2008, and not for the better. In our old neighborhood, there were drive-by shootings on a daily basis, robberies, murders, and my mom even watched our neighbors get assaulted. Yeah, a terrible city, like I said. We have moved to a better area, but still have some crime. My parents haven't exactly gotten with the times. They've always lived in a bubble where they think nothing bad has or ever will happen. Anytime something bad happens, they brush it off like it's not a big deal. In our old neighborhood, if there was a drive-by shooting, they would just ignore it and wouldn't even flinch. They have no sense of danger at all. One time we were walking our dog and there was a literal gang riot in progress at an intersection, and my mom tried persuading me to walk through it. I refused, of course, because I'm not dumb and she seemed to think our dog would protect us from 100 plus possibly armed people. The trouble started recently. I started carrying, I have a firearm in my car and one in my nightstand. I hope to God I never have to use them, but if it comes to it, I will. My mom discovered this after rummaging through my nightstand, which she regularly does because she's a stalker, which is another story. They were furious and sat me down and told me I needed to get rid of it. My dad's now convinced I'm a thug and deliberately going around causing trouble. My mom's convinced I'm mentally unstable and tried telling me I need to get help. My parents don't believe in self-defense. I tried explaining why I carry, but they wouldn't listen, and my mom said, "If someone assaults you, you let it happen and call the police afterwards." I was dumbstruck because what? My dad threatened to call the police on me, which did scare me because our city has a blue police department and is very, very anti-firearms. My parents ended up telling me if I didn't get rid of my firearms, they'd kick me out. I ended up keeping my firearms and getting an apartment. Now for the revenge. I texted my mom and told her I was coming over to get all of my things. She responded okay, and I went over to gather my things. I took the DVD player, the recliner, the area rugs, the lamps, the chest freezer, all the soaps in the house, the laundry detergent, the dish soap, all of the furniture upstairs, everything that was mine. Even the front door, which I paid for, and my cat. By the time I was done, that house was bare naked inside and they had no door. I loaded up the moving truck and left. I also took the security cameras, since I bought those too. Later, my mom called me hysterical, saying they'd been robbed. I informed her that they hadn't, and I'd simply collected my belongings. She was speechless. She knew she couldn't do anything because 1, I had all the receipts, and 2, all the stuff was in fact mine. She hung up, and I blocked her. Now for the cherry on top. I'd been paying roughly $400 a month toward the mortgage. I knew that they couldn't afford that house, which was literally falling down anyway without my money, so I stopped sending them money. Within a year, the house was foreclosed on, and I drove by it shortly after that, and the whole wall had collapsed, and it was overgrown and had been vandalized, but I didn't care. Last I heard from my aunt, my parents were living in an RV somewhere, but I don't really care anymore. All of this could have been avoided if they would have let me keep my guns. Listen, I know OP strapped, so I'm not trying to get on their bad side or anything here. But cutting off the payments, sure. Taking all of the stuff that's yours, sure. But taking the front door, even if OP paid for it, it was a little bit much, they have to admit, to take the front door. I mean, at least with all of that other stuff, there's a practical use for it when you move into a new apartment. You know, you can put an area rug down. There's probably space for a recliner. You can put a cat in it. But OP went over there and really pulled the door off those hinges and just took it to a dumpster somewhere? If anything, since you paid for that door, leave the door there so at least it gets some kind of usage. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy revenge story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.